a trip across the galaxy and feel the waves of our own energy.
Hello and welcome to the Skip Squad podcast, where we don't care about what you write, we care about what you love. I'm Tstaffor.
And I'm Luxaiko.
And today we have on...
J Dune.
The famous SCP author J Dune, known for such works as Redacted, Data Expunged, and no, we're not going to talk about those.
That was a good joke.
Thank you. But unfortunately, this week, I am saying no to any jokes. There's no funny business. We've come to learn your favorite SCPs, so I'm deeming there will be no bits this episode.
I promise,
no jokes whatsoever.
Fuck that up.
No funny businesses.
What about just the one funny business?
You know, a little tear just streamed down my face when I learned that we weren't going to talk about my work, but it's okay.
Wasn't an anime
Yeah, it's always
tear?
a surprise whenever we have authors on. We surprise them with the fact that we ask them for like a good list of like 5 of their best works, and then we burn them in front of them.
Just literally print them up and burn them.
Yeah.
You guys mean that you don't want to hear me talk about myself for like an hour? Like, come on.
We don't.
That's all these podcasts are.
I know. So we're so original and creative, aren't we? Well,
We are
what
gods,
an original
gods of
SCP
originality.
podcast. What's this first SCP?
SCP-3885 by CadaverCommander. Titled, the hell's the title? The High-Octane Full-Throttle Adventures of the Exploding Zombie Gearheads.
So,
That title.
this is personally, I think, the closest we can get to talking about your stuff while not talking about your stuff, because this definitely felt like the type of stuff you've written, kind of based off your writing.
Yeah, well, I mean, CadaverCommander's works probably have the most influence on my type of writing. They're heavily character-focused pieces. He likes to incorporate a lot of humor. A lot of his work is emotionally resonant, too. I mean, I think a lot of my stuff doesn't really touch on, like relatable emotions in as masterfully as Sludge is able to do it. But yeah, I do take a lot of inspiration from it. But man, I think I chose this one because CadaverCommander has 2 other articles that you've definitely heard of, Moon Champion and 4999. And I feel like this one should get some focus too, because there's a really cool tale series attached to it. We'll talk about that.
So I've actually read that tale series and never knew this was the origin story for Joey.
Yep, this is the origin story of Joey Fucknuts, which is one of the best characters on the wiki. But yeah, this it's funny because he's not in this article.
No, he's just mentioned.
Only mentioned.
Yeah.
And he's mentioned with a really funny line too.
All of these guys definitely have the same vibe as Joey, though. So
the dialogue is incredible, especially in the last bit. The thing that I love about CadaverCommander is how he's able to balance those emotional resonant moments with utter, ridiculous dialogue. Like just super over the top, punch in the sky, that's metal as fuck sort of humor. And yet you can still often find little bits that, wow, that was touching or interesting or sad or whatever. The balance between those things is hard.
It definitely is, and I don't think there's anyone on the wiki that pulled it off as well as he did, because every single one of his characters, regardless of the article, are both memorable and funny, and they kind of just... The dialogue is where CadaverCommander shines, and like those characters kind of like pop off the screen. I think personally that it's really hard to write like evocative dialogue in the SCP format, because it's very much rooted in like, that type of like, all right, this character says one thing, that character says another thing. It's almost ingrained into the format how a lot of interview logs and such go. So, and I don't think CadaverCommander has any interview logs that follow that, bog standard researcher anomaly back and forth.
I mean, this one isn't even an interview log. Right. It's like just 2 of these zombie creatures casually hyping each other up with their new creations.
It's because of CadaverCommander and the way that he handles dialogue and the way that he works around the fact that why does the Foundation have a recording of this, that I often will try to find ways of just oh, it's just a recording of these people talking instead of it being an interview log. I don't remember I've almost never done interview logs because I don't, for the same reasons you just said. It's just so much more interesting to be well, let's just capture these characters in their element for a moment and then use it as an excuse to get a bit of a window into their weirdness.
And what an element that is. I think we should describe this article for people who haven't read it.
Yes. So, I mean, you can describe the article, but I call dibs on explaining the monster truck.
Sure. This article, SCP-3885, centers around a small mining town that's filled with these zombies, these decomposing zombies. And they're not that smart, but they really have a penchant for putting things together, vehicles. So there's a section of the article where they build all sorts of heavily modified, Mad Max style, tricked out cars, and they're just utterly ridiculous. And they blowing them up.
Like a tiny Volkswagen with 18 flamethrowers on it or something?
Yeah. To describe a few of them, we got a 2010 Ford F-350 pickup truck with a jet turbine placed in the bed. And these cars, they build them and they blow them up. They don't exactly work or anything like that, but they don't care. For example, there was a monster truck, each wheel replaced with an entire 1965 Mustang. The entire chassis was armored, spiked, equipped with 4 flamethrowers, a sound system consisting of 19 haphazardly placed guitar amp stacks, and an ice cream dispenser. And one of the zombies, just after this, vehicle doesn't.
Also, it's completely non-functional. It doesn't drive, obviously.
Right. But it does play music, and it's described by one of these zombies as the most metal ice cream maker in fucking history. And that's kind of the gist. I think you can understand what, I
think all you need to think about, or all you need to know to get the tone of this article, is looking at that second image, and it's this far off in the distance, kind of over a desert, kind of a desert vista or whatever. There's a huge explosion in the background, and the caption just says "typical result of the anomaly's attempted automotive engineering."
No, but it also makes it. What's the one sentence preceding that? That really makes the picture work too.
The one, which I don't know. It's balanced next to.
It says up here, this is the bit about how they will frequently threaten civilians with violence if goods are not surrendered, but they don't actually carry out any physical assault. They're kind of, and again, this is a common theme with CadaverCommander's work, is that he often does write about characters that have a threatening or imposing appearance, but have a lot of human heart to them that aren't overtly evil. You know what I mean? Or will do something.
The characters definitely are a not ship for the jokes. What is it called?
What's that?
I'm blanking on the word. They're a vehicle. Is it vehicle for the jokes?
It is, yeah. Which is really appropriate for this article.
I think I can, with a clean mind, say that was no pun intended, because I didn't even remember what word I was trying to say.
No, but there's that one line. As a result, the vehicles produced by the anomaly invariably range from merely structurally flawed and inoperable to extremely hazardous, with 43% of observed creations suffering catastrophic mechanical failure via conflagration and explosion.
I know. No, what I was going to say is the characters are definitely a vehicle for the jokes, but at the same time, they all do have depth to them.
Oh,
yeah, and you don't really see it so much in this article, but you do in the Tale series. Because this article, you only spend a limited amount of time with the little zombies and everything. But their dialogue is great.
Oh, the dialogue is excellent.
The other section of the description that I wanted to talk about was how I liked that the Foundation leaves these guys alone. Like, they have this little town, and they're aware of the Foundation, but they don't care because they're able to just do what they want to do, and they're not exactly, they're not a huge threat to the Veil. It'd be harder to contain them otherwise. It's easier to just, keep a watch over this town and make sure that they're not driving their vehicles out into, civilization or anything. I really do like that.
They appreciate the Foundation because they didn't actually like going out and threatening for vehicles. They just did it because they needed the vehicles. So the Foundation giving them vehicles is great.
They just give them fucked up cars so that way they don't leave.
And then there is that bit about them getting access to products outside of the town through somebody that they refer to as the boss, which that's another thing with a lot of Sludge articles where he'll allude to something going on outside of the Foundation's knowledge, and I think that's a component of a lot of good SCP articles, is that there's an element of mystery, especially in these character ones. You kind of have to have that to allude to a larger world outside of what you're just seeing. I really like that. I've taken a lot of influence from that style of writing.
You want to give the SCP Foundation still something that they can research.
Well, yeah, but you also want to give the reader... I mean, I totally agree, because you want to give the reader something like, wait, what was that about? Not like a complete madness, like what did that even mean, but like these little threads, even if you never write about them again, just to open... I mean, that's the whole point of this collaborative-ass project, right?
Right. And I definitely think that there's an element of importance to keeping things that the Foundation doesn't understand, because what you're reading is still it's a format, and it is a document written from the perspective of the Foundation, and it doesn't really make sense if they understand everything, or if they have every piece of information available to them, because what you're reading is somebody's point of view of this, so-called objective information.
Right, yeah. I think there's there's more than two, but I think there's two basic modes to dealing with an SCP file. It's either the Foundation totally understands this crazy, bizarre thing, and the interesting thing is how they break it down, this very otherworldly thing, or the thing that I most often like to do is just we don't know how this works, we're just cataloging it.
That's the I think that's the easier way of...
It is easier, totally. Yeah.
Right. But I think it works, though. It's more fun to read that.
Yeah.
Because why would you... A lot of articles that get very, expository with the information, there are occasions where I'll read something and I'll think, all right, how does the Foundation know this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even if it's a little thing.
I did have this later on the list, but I think this is a very good segue to talk about Something is Wrong, because I feel like Something is Wrong does both of those in a way.
It does both of those, but then it answers nothing.
Yeah.
Right. Before we get to that, though, I do want to say that if you do read 3885, make sure you read the, I think, 2 or 3 Joey Fucknuts tales, because they're funny, they're heartfelt, and they're some of the best writing on the wiki. They're
also
genuinely original, genuinely funny. They're very good.
Before we go and move on from CadaverCommander, he's got a really awesome self-published novel called Featherlight, which is... I've never stopped talking about this. We've brought it up on other podcasts.
I feel like the only time you've ever talked about this was when Grigori was on. No,
that's ridiculous. Grigori, who is that? Anyway, Featherlight is a really good novel, and people should go read it.
It's so good. I don't even
incredible.
You took Grigori's recommendation to read it? That's cool.
That's right, yeah. Well, for once, I would never listen to that piece of shit.
I think that if you want to read Featherlight, it's on Royal Road, and I'm not sure how their model works. I think it's free on Royal Road, but I would just recommend just paying for it. It's one of the best books that I've read. It's a really, really, really.
It's not
funny.
Expensive. It's available as ebook. From Amazon. I got it from Amazon, and it's just so worth your time. I really hope that there's a follow up at some point, because I really loved it.
You finished it, right?
Yeah.
Heiko? Right. It's a good book. Genuinely, I'm a little hesitant to read fantasy novels and things.
Me too.
But this was one of the only cases where the world actually pulled me in, and I actively wanted to learn more about it, because the way that it's delivered, even the exposition parts, are so entertaining and fun, and it doesn't hinder the story.
No, totally. It breaks this rule that I have in my own writing and in other stuff that I read that I hate, and yet Sludge does such an incredible job with it, where he'll pause the action of a scene and then inorganically just talk directly to the reader about some element of the world. And yet, because his voice is so clear and so funny and so gritty at the same time, although it's not like edgy, it's so compelling. And like, just to warn readers, it's not like a fantasy novel in the traditional sense. It's clearly a world that at some point in the past was, high fantasy D&D Lord of the Rings type shit, but now it's very much an urban setting, very cyberpunk. Yeah.
And I also would say that the book is entirely in first person, which is I think this is why the exposition works, because the character that is delivering it is so entertaining and interesting and has such a strong voice. It's basically, the exposition parts sound like him like angrily or just cautiously ranting about things that he's having to deal with.
Right.
And it's so good. It's so entertaining.
There's even like a lot of moments where he'll pause to explain something to the reader and is annoyed at himself for exposition. And it's so funny. It's like, ugh, I hate this, but you won't understand it otherwise. So here, let me explain this for like a paragraph. And it's so good.
Sometimes he pauses to explain while he's getting like the shit beat out of him. It's great.
It's a good book. Anyway.
And the other thing I want to say is that Featherlight is probably better than anything on the SCP wiki, like leagues ahead. Like, if you want to support like CadaverCommander's writing, go read that. Go buy that. Like, obviously his SCP stuff is great, but that's that is where I think his writing shines the most.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of people that write on the wiki that only ever wanted to write on the wiki and are not interested necessarily in getting published. And I think there's a lot of other people that treat it in a lot of ways the way that I've treated it, which is, this is a way to like polish my craft. And CadaverCommander clearly did that and then came out the other side, capable of writing a really compelling novel that is also funny. Anyway,
all right. That was our shill for the book for Featherlight.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. How much did you guys make off of that shell?
0.
I made
$0 except the satisfaction.
Yeah, no.
But I'm very supportive of the idea of SCP authors going on to make published works for completely unbiased reasons.
What are we talking about next, Tstaffor?
It's your choice. It's your show. Take over.
Okay, yeah, let's use that to transition into Something Is Wrong then. So, SCP-4972, Something Is Wrong by Tanhony. Do any of you want to take the introduction to this article?
I just can't. It's like, I'll say that the description is probably the shortest thing I've ever read for a description of an SCP object. It's great. Mm-hmm. It's SCP-4972 is an object, entity, or phenomenon presumed to exist within an adaptive containment chamber located at Site-22. And that is the whole fucking thing. And it's fucking great because you never really learn anything about the anomaly except through very vague abstraction.
The very interesting thing is, even though the special containment procedures are basically focused around dealing with this containment unit of basically just leave it alone, they don't actually classify the unit itself as the anomaly, even though to me it feels like that's what the anomaly is. They don't. They're like, no, it's the thing inside.
I think it's a side anomaly. I mean, like, I think you're right, because I think I saw comments in there where people were like, oh, this is like a Thaumiel class anomaly. And it's like, well, maybe the containment chamber is, but that's not really the point. And there's clearly something going on inside. It's not just the chamber.
I mean, something is wrong.
Yeah, something is wrong.
Can I just say that is one of my favorite titles on the wiki? It's so simple. It gets the atmosphere of the article across very well too, because the whole thing is just laced in mystery, and like there's that uneasy feeling that Tanhony is so good at channeling with his more like surreal works that is just very much found in here.
Tanhony did surrealistics, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
I Buried the Sun is another amazing article in this
I
style.
love Dr. Gat. Anything with I stole Dr. Gat for my resurrection stuff, so I love that character, and so like this gave me total vibes of surrealistics.
No, this is like peak Tanhony, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
So this article, we got the concept of there being something inside the containment chamber, and if I remember correctly, the containment chamber appeared out of nowhere, right?
Yeah, they
It
have
just
no
appeared
idea
one
where
day.
it came from. There's no record of
was,
it, even with
wasn't it approved by 057 or something?
Well, it's approved by 056, but then even with nestic treatments, so that 056 could try and remember it, they could not remember anything to do with it, and no one
There's
else
also
can remember
a
anything
bit
to do
about
with
it
it.
being. There's also a bit about it being a model of a containment chamber that does not exist yet.
Yeah, they didn't even have a prototype.
Oh yeah,
for it.
yeah.
They have like specifics of what goes into this containment chamber, but it was never even prototyped. This is just like they just have like statistics of what it does and whatnot, but they don't know where it came from. It just kind of popped in.
Yeah, and then
you
we get to the two. I mean, just the two. What do you call them? Logs of weirdness.
They're the only good interview logs on the site.
That's ridiculous, and I hate you for
Yeah,
saying
I know.
it.
Joke. No, this is funny because we were talking about that like formulaic like back and forth, and this kind of takes that and really like makes you realize how strange and formulaic that back and forth is, and then it flips it on its head.
I mean, the first one
makes you care about the like scene. Oh, I'm blanking on the word again, but like the stage commands part.
Oh yeah, because they're so important
log.
here.
Yeah, the first log is just getting that weird sort of dialogue in between like a researcher and a D class. They kind of slip in like surreal like phrases and stuff, and you kind of get the vibe that like they're being affected by this thing.
Yes.
And then it ends with the stinger line of Dr. Kare stands up and exits through the door on his side of the interview room. The D class stands up and exits through the far right wall. He goes through the wall, and that's
so good.
And Tanhony's done this in another article before. I can't remember off my head, but it's always nice when someone plays with the action tags. You know what I mean?
Yeah, if you're not paying attention to the stage direction, then you completely miss the fact that something fucked up just happened.
Yeah, and it really doesn't acknowledge it too in like a perfect way. It just is like, yeah, and he leaves through the wall.
My favorite thing though is that the last spoken line in this log is cool. Like it's such a weird, like it's a giant middle finger to like all the logs that ended with a doctor saying, "Well, that's all for today."
And that continues to the second one where you know there's more strange things happening and more surreal phrases, and there's the repeated tag of Dr. Kare takes notes for increasing amounts of times, going from like a minute to 5 hours to 664 years. Like and it's really not doing anything like crazy. Like this is really not like all that weird. It's just how well done the dialogue.
It's also how subtle it is because he does that Dr. Kare takes notes thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. By the time it goes really crazy, it's the 5th time. And when I read this earlier, I completely ignored this. Dr. Kare takes notes for 634 years. It's like, what?
Because I definitely have done the mistake of saying like, and they stayed silent for 7 minutes, because that is so long if you actually think about it. To be silent in an interview.
I've used that for weirdness in Victim before, where it's like, and then there's 345 minutes of static. And then people will notice it like way later on, because it's just like, well, why would that happen? It's like, I don't know, why did it happen?
And then the final interview log is more of the same stuff up until the end, when Dr. Kare sinks into the floor and disappears into the containment chamber.
Well, the second Dr. Kare, that's my favorite part, is when they go the second. I was reading this, and I immediately reread the whole log going, what do you mean the second? Where did that happen?
The whole log has Dr. Kare asking which one is me.
Yeah.
And then, you know, Dr. Kare will respond. And again, like there's that final line, and there's something is wrong. Something is wrong. Don't even think about it. Don't try to work it out. You're getting too close to it. I shouldn't have said anything. I'm sorry. And it's, again, you're not getting information on the anomaly because it's not important. It's just the atmosphere. And it's very well done. It's very fun. Like
I almost feel like this was like a challenge to like not outdo, but like to mimic in a different way the vibe of 055.
I mean, I'm surprised this wasn't like a 3055 or something, because I mean Tanhony has done
It's a little
this.
on the
Just
nose.
recently, he did the 7096, which was a great reimagining of
did 7096.
6096, whatever. You don't know. You don't know my life.
Oh yeah, the guest. I don't know if I'd compare this to the guest, but I definitely understand the point you're making with Tanhony trying to take these classic concepts and actually do something refreshing with them, because the guest is probably one of the best murder monsters on the wiki.
Oh no,
years,
I meant
you know what
I
mean?
meant 055 is the one where we don't know anything about it except for it's not round.
Right. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
saying,
And
like,
Is that what that's
Tanhony
called? The
does
guest?
these- No,
The guest
no. 09 SCP-6096 is kind of a reimagining
Oh,
of
yeah,
the
yeah,
Shy
yeah.
Guy,
Yeah.
and this is kind of a reimagining of Unknown.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that was intentional or not. I'm just saying it you can interpret that. It's going
Yeah,
for a
definitely.
similar vibe is the point, only in a completely different way, because it's not just objective, bullshit clinical language. It's evoking this stuff through the surreal dialogue and the interesting stage direction.
It's so good. This is like one of those articles that I'm definitely jealous of, just
Yeah.
because of how well done it is. It's such a simple concept because, again, you're not revealed anything about the anomaly. It just rides entirely on atmosphere, and it does it well. And I actually took major inspiration from this article for my my Harbinger article. I don't know if either of you read this. This is the one with the underwater clown. Do you guys remember that?
So unfortunately, I always meant to read through the Harbinger stuff and then never did. So I'm sorry.
That's okay.
The funny thing about the Harbingers, actually, that you mentioned it, is the only one I have read was the Tanhony one, and I still haven't gotten around to the other ones.
Tanhony's was fucking good. That was the best one.
Yeah.
In my opinion. Okay, but my what I was gonna say was my article had the concept of a containment chamber appearing out of nowhere, and there's weird shit in it, and because I really like the idea of an anomaly just happening. You know what I mean?
No, totally. And I enjoy when. So I think, and I've fallen prey to this too often. We're interested in the deep history of an anomaly, and I mean that's half the reason why Victim is the way it is. It's just fuck you, I don't care. And I thought this was a great way of doing that because there's so much mystery involved with the special containment procedures and even the discovery, but you never once even get a sense of what's in there. Because who cares? That's not the point. The atmosphere is the point. The tone is the point. It's good stuff.
I will agree with that. I think a lot of my favorite articles are ones that are reliant on atmosphere rather than something high concept. Although I do like a lot of character concepts. I think my favorite articles on the wiki are ones that either deal with characters or ones that coast by solely on atmosphere. And I think that's very hard to do because it's so easy to write something cheap.
Yeah.
Where you kind of wiggle your way out of any payoff because you're saying, oh, well, it's anomalous. It doesn't need payoff, No, that atmosphere needs to be curated like this article does. It does it really well.
No, it's excellent.
I'm jealous. Again, we're looking over these articles, and sometimes I'm just in awe at some of the quality on the upper crust of the site. You know what I mean?
This is also a really good example of a piece of fiction that probably just wouldn't work almost anywhere else.
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
I mean, what? And that's not a dig. That is me yet again singing the praises of this format and how sometimes it is capable of telling stories you almost couldn't see other places.
You sometimes you do need the context of the SCP format. There's a lot of things that don't really fit in the format because the format objectively is meant to constrain. It sucks.
Right,
the format sucks, and I think most the format nowadays is just people ignore it so much, myself included. That's just the standard for SCP writing is ignoring the fact that you're writing a government, well, not government, but you know what I mean, a clinical document from the perspective of someone, which we talked about.
Mixing the two. I like more often than not doing super clinical stuff in between really weird character moments.
Or something like this where you kind of have to ignore the fact that this is a format and just accept it at face value because you're being presented such weird, surreal visuals.
Especially when you go back and you look, especially if you get to the end and you go, wait, what was that? And you go back and, sometimes if you're speed reading through something, you'll kind of miss a detail. And you go back and look at the description or the discovery and you go, oh, okay, that makes sense. And this one, it's like, no, it doesn't help at all.
Yeah.
You just got to like realize there's something being said between the lines. The article is not super interested in telling you what it is, but that's okay because it's really just trying to evoke a tone. Like it's light. It's a little more lighthearted, but it feels very Lynchian in that way.
I also feel like I get the vibe that even Tanhony doesn't actually know what the explanation of this thing is, which I
why
really
bother?
think really helps actually,
Yeah.
because it doesn't matter.
Maybe he's got like a complete like Bible answer to it. I mean, it's really funny. I've asked Fan and Pulse a bunch about different articles that he's done, and he's like, "Oh yeah, that's this," and it's like, "Oh shit," because it's like, well, it's just so mysterious. He's like, "Yeah, I just cut out all the parts that explain shit."
Anyway, so I want to make it clear this is not one of the bits, and I will prove that by not actually singing the song. So, J Dune, how did you find this site, and what was the first article you read, and what inspired you to write, or whatever?
See, like, I don't really know how I found SCP. I've always been like omni-aware of it over the years as something that emerged out of, because like this is an eye-rolling statement, but I've been on 4chan a lot, and I heard about SCP as something that came out of X, and I thought it was a creepypasta site, and I kind of understood the concept immediately, and I never read anything other than there's this Series 1 article called The Obscene Show, or The Obscene Performance, or something like that. It's a duo of Punch and Judy hand puppets, and they pick up objects out of almost like hammer space, and they get violent with one another, and they attack the person using the puppets. And I read that one, and I was like, oh, that's cool.
This seems like an inspiration of some kind.
Yeah, that's I would say so with the puppet article that I did. I think mine's a lot better than that, not to toot my own horn.
It is.
Because again, like I went back and recently reread the Punch and Judy one, and I was kind of disappointed because I'm so spoiled with like what like modern SCP stuff is. Whereas like sometimes I'll go back and read an older article and I'll be like, oh man. But I do love that article. It definitely is one of the ones that inspired me to consider writing for the site. And then that was years ago though. I completely forgot about even writing SCPs up until 2020. And COVID hit, quarantine hit, and I was like, all right, I'll give the SCP Wiki a shot. And I can't remember what the first one I read was, probably 173, but the one that actually inspired me to write was 1981, Ronald Reagan Cut Up While Talking. And again, that is like one of my probably top 5 articles still, because it's like the gold standard for horror on the wiki, I think. I think it is so perfect.
Yeah.
And
no,
so,
I agree. It's
it
one
by?
of the few. It's one of the few ones that you hear talked about a lot that I think holds up. That and like 093 that like gets talked about a lot. That like almost every YouTube channel that's ever covered SCP has covered Ronald Reagan Cut Up While Talking. And yet, when you read it, it's still unsettling. Even though before I read it, I already knew what was going to go in. Like it's so effective.
It's one that lays its cards on the table from its title. It's going to be Ronald Reagan.
It's one of those ones where it just kind of goes
and
so much further than you expect it to go, I think, without being like edgy.
It's not overindulgent. I really like it. It's just that perfect vibe of like creepy internet horror. And then even like the stinger to that article with the picture of the hooded entity, the whole ICU thing. That's nothing crazy. It's just that the way
I don't even like that part.
That's again, like that's like it's nothing crazy. That's not what you're coming there for.
Yeah.
But again, I think it works because the rest of the article is so strong and the concept is so strong. And at the time, you have to remember that it was probably pretty impressive to see an image stinger at the time.
Oh yeah, probably.
I
will say just the opening images is really, really well done.
Good.
They're really
you know what made me like do a double take with that article? So the author of that, Digiwizzard, that's like their only article on the site.
It's crazy.
And it was written in 6 hours. From the Sandbox's first edit to the Sandbox's last edit, it was written in 6 hours and posted on the same day. And it was, I'm pretty sure it was a total winner, too. I could be wrong on that. But...
Well, it's over 2,000 now, so either way.
Yeah, but still, like, that just goes to show, like, immediately that, like, resonated with everybody, universally.
Yeah, it's kind of that perfect cursed media vibe. In the way that the best creepypasta, Link drowned or Ben drowned sort of feel, same vibe to it. It's just like, wow, this is like believable.
It does, yeah, no, it's something that takes
the
like a grounded anomaly
is very high.
Yeah,
because it's just so simple. It's just a VHS tape that degrades and changes every time you play it.
This one's
not like a big crazy thing.
It's a huge inspiration for me. This one and the one about the basketball game that just keeps going.
Yes, that was another article that I read. Again, I was attracted mostly when I first started writing to the anomalous media articles, and like things like Kalinin, Seven Strangers at a Feast, and the basketball article.
Also, quick shout out to a really good tale that was recently published about the basketball game that's actually like kind of going back in time from the red sky back to the first playing of the tape from the perspective of someone in the tape. It's really fun.
Oh, wow.
What's this called?
I should actually say that. I'll look that up and you guys can continue talking.
Yeah, because, okay, well, that article written by BB Aztec, the basketball game one, what's it called?
It's just
basketball VHS.
Yeah, it's just called like a game. Like it's just like the game on the date or something like that. It's like.
Is it?
I think so.
I'm pretty sure it has. I don't know. Anyways, BB Aztec also wrote a really good media SCP. Sometimes I go out and pity for myself, which is a quote from
season opener. It's season opener.
Season opener, right? And they also wrote the Sopranos DVD one, which is another, probably the best. I'd say the only good. All right, I'm gonna get crucified for that, but I'd say it's the only good pataphysics article. Like in the sense that it's my favorite one.
Okay.
It's the one that I prefer as an interpretation of pataphysics because, again, that's a section of the site where I'm not a huge fan of it. But I really do like that like creepy take on it that incorporates it into anomalous media. And you know what? I also like that pataphysics article about the guy who keeps showing up in books.
Oh yeah! Oh god, we read that for the show not that long ago.
We talked about that on the Uranium Empire episode. Don Quixote, right?
Yeah.
Is his name? What's his name? He has a name.
Don Quixote.
I think we're talking about different articles.
Yeah, I was thinking of the Parawatch one that we talked about on Simply Cool People.
It's a pataphysics one.
No. There's an SCP article from I think series 2 about a character who appears in literature, and the Foundation kind of, they talk with him, and he's very like down to earth, and his name's Fred, and they like to put him into books so he could experience them, and he writes out his thoughts on them.
Yeah.
And
is that pataphysics?
It's pataphysics, yeah.
Kind of.
I mean, I don't think it's branded it because it was created before pataphysics really was a thing.
Pataphysics is a thing outside of the wiki, guys.
Yes.
You try to turn it into a brand, and you try to turn it into what isn't pataphysics hardline structure, whereas I think pataphysics is just meta stories. You know what I mean?
No. But I get what you mean.
Also, I found it. It's Yellow Lightning is the name of the tale, and I'll link it.
Too.
Yeah, definitely. I'm even though it's a tale, I'll try to read it.
Oh my god.
That's a joke.
You monster.
That's a joke. What? We can't go like 5 minutes without me taking a dig at something?
I said at the start of this, no jokes.
You can make digs on things that I have not been involved with.
All right, so what do we got next?
I don't know. It's your show.
Okay, yeah, true. Hawaiian Punch. Let's talk about that one.
God, please let's talk about this one. I had not read this before. I'm so glad you put this on the list. It's incredible.
So I want to make a little compilation or something of like the best of different sodas SCPs because this one there's one for like a geyser that shoots out some like Taco Bell's drink or something. That's just like a geyser of the drink, and there's
There's
so
a
many
Baja
good.
Blast geyser?
Yes, the Baja Blast one.
Well, I haven't read that, but Hawaiian Punch is, by Kalinin, SCP-3977, is one of my favorite articles on the site. Kalinin's probably my top 3 authors. I love him. He just has like such an inherent understanding of how horror works on this site.
He's got easily my favorite one. Well, other than the record. For me,
Past and Future is really good. I do think it is a bit overly long, especially when Kalin's articles are like very short most of the time. Not super like short form, but they're definitely around that like middling length. But Past and Future is good. Hawaiian Punch, the concept is that when you take a high amount of Hawaiian Punch, a high volume of it, and put it in one location, these anomalous broadcasts will signal from the Hawaiian Punch, and you could watch them. And that's
when
the
you
anomaly.
say a high amount, let's just be clear: it's
Like,
amounts greater than 500,000 liters.
And
And it's just Hawaiian Punch. There's nothing. The anomaly only happens when it's more than 500,000 liters, which is why no one's noticed it before now.
No, but like the highest one, like the last one they mark is like 1.1 million liters.
Yes, the broadcasts increase when you increase the amount of Hawaiian Punch. And what the broadcasts are, they follow the Hawaiian Punch mascots, Punchy and Oaf. You've seen them. They're the dudes on the Hawaiian Punch cans. And they kind of go through these like weird like art house film narratives where they like do like passion plays and like
I legitimately want to watch the one that's like the Punchy is like a queen and Oaf is her last like supervisor or whatever.
Yeah, during,
and they're like
during World War
discussing
II, right?
Come on. Yeah. There's a line, Punchy is crucified after being flogged and marched to Golgotha, where he is visited by an angelic figure who informs him that he is not, in fact, the Messiah and is free to live a normal life. The narrative shifts to an extended 45-minute montage of Punchy offering various citizens of Jerusalem a drink that resembles Hawaiian Punch, only to punch them in the face upon accepting the offer.
Oh, good.
Just terrific.
It's amazing. And again, like the first one is a passion play. The second one, and the Foundation, the funniest part to me is that the Foundation does a contextual analysis of these broadcasts where they try to find meaning out of these.
Oh, that's
like,
a fun...
For example, the Passion Play one has the complexity of the narrative increases once more. Oaf serves as a more Christ-like figure in this narrative, though Punchy's violence is, for the most part, presented as more of an inescapable character flaw rather than a simple emotional reaction to outside factors. So they're trying to analyze this.
I also think that's a very creative, like, extra thing for that style of logs. I haven't seen that before, of like a contextual analysis style.
Yeah, it's like a smarter afternote sort of thing.
Basically.
But the thing I really like about it is the whiplash of tone. So we've got this very clinical tone at the beginning, and then once they get into the broadcast, and it takes, the first couple of broadcasts are fairly straightforward. They seem like ads, and then, like you said, they get into like a passion thing.
I have to disagree, because the very second one is a full Robinson Crusoe movie, but whatever.
Yeah, you're right. But my point is that it gets like wilder and wilder in this synopsis, and then we go back to like a really high level clinical like thematic analysis. And it's just I love the whiplash so much.
Yeah, the build-up's very good. The third one is Punchy and Oaf as Punchy is the Hawaiian queen, and Oaf is one of her royal retainers. And this takes place like in a situation where like historically there's I think Hawaii is trying to gain independence around this time. Historically, I'm not too familiar with the history of the annexation of Hawaiian Islands, but that's where this film takes place, and that's kind of like a very like art house deep subject. And it's played straight, like this one isn't goofy or anything, and then it's just that it's an animated with Punchy and Oaf in the place of these characters taking it seriously. And then there's the line, the last line of the film as it closes is better to stain them red than to leave no trace as water.
So
that's great.
So deep. Again, the fucking tonal whiplash here
Also,
is fucking amazing.
I mean, I first read that and just kind of like was like, okay, yeah, blood, and now hearing you say it again, I'm now realizing they meant Hawaiian Punch.
That's right.
Yeah, it's Hawaiian Punch.
Which I didn't even get that at first, but that's so good.
And then the final, the climax of the article is just completely like, just over the top.
It's both over the top and also very navel gazy, in this very funny way. Like, it's almost mocking the incredibly like intense like thematic analysis that's already happened within its own article.
It is a 3-hour film. Or 3-act film called The Province of God. Punchy and Oaf are no longer animated. They're they're living beings.
That's also horrifying.
With
That's
features
like very horrifying.
Yeah, it is. And it features a telling of Punchy's life as he falls into like the criminal underworld, and eventually he is like I can't even describe it. It's just it's so dense.
He goes home each night to his family, consisting of his wife and 3 children, all played by Oaf. He barely communicates with wife Oaf, leading her to increased depression and neglect of the 3 child Oafs.
Wife Oaf is the best line in something ever.
I mean, but then the context is like, oh, that's really dark, but the like phrase wife Oaf and child Oafs is like really funny. It's so good.
The 3rd act ends with Punchy being mutilated and beaten by a god Oaf. And he bleeds Hawaiian Punch into a river. And the contextual analysis is really funny too. The stinger line is, unlike previous narratives, very little from this broadcast can be interpreted in a direct manner or oblique, as enjoying the viewer to purchase and consume Hawaiian Punch. Like the other ones are like, all right, maybe these could be glorified advertisements, but what the hell is this?
Fucking insane. I'm so glad you put it on the list because I never.
More people need to read it. This didn't even hit 200 yet. This did not even hit 200 yet. That is really a shame. And
no, this definitely deserves a lot more reading.
Well, you know what the best part about this article is? This is a JamCon piece.
Oh yeah, this was another like quick one.
Yeah, that's amazing.
In another sweeping generalization, this is the only good JamCon article.
Okay, that's horrible. I'm gonna smack you through the internet. I've never even written anything for the JamCons, and for all the people that are listening that are upset now.
We can say that JamCons, on average, because of what JamCon is, and the constraints that are put upon the author, do not always produce the best work, because you're being asked to write an article in under 24 hours. This is perfect. This is a perfect article.
Yeah, it's kind of impressive. Not because it's good, because there are other good JamCon, but you're right, a lot of them are really bad. I think it's most impressive because it really shows Kalinin was probably like doing a real flow of consciousness sort of writing. Like this shit just occurred to him and it just was amazing, you know? Like it's just like, where the fuck did this come from? I'm not sure, but I'm glad it's on the site now.
I think the best SCP articles, especially like the these ones that kind of just float out of someone, are the ones that have like very simple, like grokkable concepts that kind of make sense. Like, even though it's something absurd, the way that it's presented to you makes sense in your head afterwards. You can easily condense it down to a single sentence and understand where it's going. Like, all right, Hawaiian Punch broadcasts. Sure. The other article that we talked about, Tanhony's Mysterious Containment Chamber, Ronald Reagan VHS tape, Gearhead zombies. Like, these things are very simple concepts that are memorable and they stick with you. And I think that's why a lot of these really good articles are successful, is because of how like much the concept sticks with the reader after the fact and has its own internal logic that follows through on it in a satisfying way.
This does a really good thing that I've talked to GW about before, where it just follows the logical extreme. Like, it sets up this, like you said, a very simple, like at least conceptually, a very simple anomaly, and then kind of goes, okay, how weird would this go? How strange could this get? You know, it's really, really well done.
It also isn't too overtly comedic too, which I like.
Yeah.
And I know it's funny for me saying that because a lot of like the humor that I write is very like over the top and stuff and immature and like yeah, very on the nose. But this is a very funny article, and it does it in a subtle way. It never really points out the humor. The humor comes from like seeing the Foundation analyze the Hawaiian Punch films. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And again, I also, because of the kind of comedy that I like and the kind of comedy that I write, like, I really like tonal whiplash. Like, I really like something that's really seriously described in, like, excruciating detail sometimes. Not that this is very long, but kind of goes into, like, really giving you a picture of what this looked like. And then the interpretation or something else about it is like, wait, what?
I've tried to play with that a little bit before with the Drain Snake article.
Oh, totally.
And I think that's the only time that I've been able to pull it off with like great success.
It's a good example, though.
It's super hard to actually like have tonal whiplash that doesn't feel unnatural and like forced. You know what I mean?
I mean, I've definitely never done that ever, so I don't know anything about it.
Okay,
It's
we're
hard. You have to
scarily
start
getting
out.
towards talking about personal articles.
No.
So I'm just going to
What?
quickly pull us away from this and go to what's the non-SCP thing you like?
Oh, are we going to that now? Yeah. When you asked me for my interest, I was like, damn, what do I do? So I was like, all right, I'll talk about Touhou.
I
Yeah,
still
great.
have no clue if
Yeah.
Touhou's just the game or if it's more than that.
Well, it's a series of
Oh,
games,
man.
right?
Touhou is a series of Japanese bullet hell games. It's like a top-down arcade shooter where you have to shoot projectiles at enemies that are shooting projectiles at you, and it's from the top down, and you could guide your character through the screen. They're very challenging games, not so much compared to other bullet hell games, but they're depending on what difficulty level, you're probably going to have a hard time. And Touhou's kind of infamous for being like one of the most successful like indie game franchises, as in like an actual independent game. The main series is all made by this guy's son, who programs and does the art and does the music for the games all by himself. He doesn't have a team or anything, and super successful.
But he has licensed out, because I've played a Metrovania based on this stuff.
But that's the thing. Touhou is a free use franchise, essentially.
Oh.
He gives his blessing to anyone pretty much to
Interesting.
go and create their own content. And some of it is licensed. There's a Touhou gacha game that's heavily licensed.
Oof.
There's official merchandise and things like that. But the way that this works is that you approach Zun with this and he'll let you do it.
Oh, nice. Yeah, so the only one I've played is Touhou Lunar Nights, but I think it's fucking incredible.
Yeah.
The only one I've played is the one when you look up Touhou and there's a link to download something. That's one I played.
Yeah,
It was
Lunar
weirdly mainly just like a bunch of ads and crashed my computer a lot. I don't know. I don't know why people enjoy the game.
The Touhou games you kind of have to like download. They are on Steam, and again, like it just depends like on what game you're talking about, because there are hundreds of Touhou games that are unofficial. There's 18 mainline games made by Zun, and 5 of them are on PC-98, which is an obscure Japanese machine that you're not going to be able to play those.
How many have you beaten?
How many Touhou games have I beaten? Not that many, about like 5 or 6. And the way you beat them is it's a varying goalpost type deal. Like the games are all very short. There's 7 stages, 6 plus 1 extra, and you could run through with continues, but that doesn't really count as beating the game. There's multiple endings in the games, and to get a good ending, you have to do what's called a like a no continue run. So you have to run through without dying, and don't use any continues. And some people do runs where they don't use any spell cards, which are like your attacks that clear projectiles off of the screen. It's different levels of varying difficulty, and you can play them how you want. But I do think that the full clear runs with no continues are the way to beat the game, so to speak. But I mean, Touhou's a lot more than just the games. Super popular, like with fan art or fan made manga. There's some official manga too. There's even
I think
a
we're
whole
missing
fan
the point. Isn't like Touhou like very, very prevalently focused on like cute anime girls?
Yeah, we'll get to that. The whole cast is It's funny though. It's funny.
Bury
because-
that under preposition. You don't want to lead with it's just a bunch of great anime.
And I want to say it's not like cute anime girls in like a creepy way. It's not one of those.
Oh no.
No.
That's the thing. Touhou's a very like modest franchise. I would
Yes.
say.
Yeah. It's
I mean,
not.
like,
It's
in
not.
the-
It did
in the
not
official-
like any of the stuff I've looked up because I've seen you share some of the stuff on Twitter, and I've been like, oh, okay, what is this? And then like looked it up, and it's like, oh, this is none of it was cringy. I mean, I'm sure there's weird fan art, but whatever.
Oh, absolutely.
About everything.
No, a lot of the official license stuff and the stuff by Zun is just so like it's very cute. It's very like
It's like pretty wholesome, honestly.
it is. It genuinely is. But the main appeal of the Touhou series is not like the gameplay or anything, it's the characters. And Zun does the art, and to be honest, like Zun is not the best artist, but his design is really strong with the characters, and that's what inspires a lot of people to make art of them, because Touhou is probably the series with the most fan art out of anything, just because of how much there is. And every artist has basically their own little pet character that they draw, and that's what they're known for. There's so many artists that are just known for drawing Touhou exclusively, or a specific character. And sometimes the way that they draw a character is like people's commonplace interpretation of them. Because Zun's art is sometimes very vague to understand. Like, for example, there's a character called Notori, and she wears this blue dress, and she's kind of a mechanic, and she sells technology and things like that. There's this one artist who usually draws her wearing like a black tank top, and that's kind of a trend that's taken over people's perception of that character. Everyone likes to draw her with a black tank top now, even though that's not found in anything official.
I feel like it's a very common trope to show the cute girl engineer or mechanic type stripped out of the overalls and in a black or some sort of tank top.
Exactly. Yeah, she has the grease stains on her face and all that.
Yeah.
But again, like the other thing with Touhou is that I do talk about it a lot, and it is like such like a niche franchise that I wonder if I like run people away on my Twitter with how much I talk about it. But I'm always happy when people come around to it, because it is something that's a lot more popular than I think people realize. Like, whether it's just most people don't play the games, but people definitely do like the characters or the fan art, or engage with they like the fucking stupid Fumo dolls, which you've definitely seen.
I was actually like basically the exact opposite. I knew a lot about the games, but I never actually realized that the people you were fighting were anime people. I didn't actually know that aspect of it. I just seen like the gameplay of it.
See, that's interesting, because I first found out about Touhou through like I saw one of the characters. I saw fan art of one of the characters, and I was like, oh, she's cute. Like, what's she from? Is that from an anime? No, it's from a game, and she doesn't actually look like that. I was like, oh, all right.
I will say that I downloaded Touhou Lunar Nights because you shared those things. I looked at the original. Not at the original, but I looked at some of the more traditional games, and I'm not like the biggest Bullet Hell fan. I'm like, sometimes Bullet Hells do it for me, but it's not that common. I don't get really into them. But Metroidvanias are like 100% my jam, and I was like, oh, cool. There's like those characters, but they're in Metroidvania, and it's terrific.
I have not played Luna Nights. I know that's probably the most popular fan made spinoff.
I have to say that it is the weirdest Metroidvania you've ever... Like, it's completely different than the normal Metroidvania, which is really cool. It really stands out.
Is Sakuya your favorite Touhou? The character you play as in that game?
She's pretty cool, but I didn't even remember her name. I liked her I just liked her design a lot.
The maid girl? Yeah. Yeah, no.
I mean, one of my favorite games is Nier Automata, so Maid Girl, yeah, big fan.
She kind of does look like 2V a little bit.
Yep, a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. Well, Sakuya came first, so I mean, there can only be one anime girl with white hair.
Well, hate to break it to you, it's actually a real old trope.
Unfortunately. But yeah, no, Touhou's awesome. I highly recommend people to go engage with Touhou stuff instead of SCP stuff like I do on Twitter, and then you can unfollow. because I keep talking about Touhou instead of what like that's another funny thing is like sometimes I'll like people like unfollow me a lot on Twitter and I know why because they have no fucking interest in what I talk about. It's so funny.
I mean,
retweet a
I
lot
do
of
think
stuff.
that it's like, don't correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like there's like a bit going on where you really lean into it. Like, because I always think it's really funny. Like, it just seems like if I didn't know you, like I would be like, who is this person? And what the fuck are they talking about?
A bit though, it's like one of those like things that I'm legitimately interested in.
No,
and just
I
wanna
know.
talk about
I
it.
don't mean that you're not interested in it. It's just it's so funny. Like the tone of some of your tweets are like, man, he's really into it.
Yeah. No, it's funny because I don't. There is a lot of Touhou people on Twitter, but they don't really interact with me. Like I don't know, they don't follow me. They don't really care. I'm just weird. Like occasionally, I got Eddie Bird, the SCP artist.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, he's not an SCP artist anymore. He's a Touhou artist now because I was like, yo, Eddie, when you gotta draw some Touhous, man. And he was like, all right, I'll draw Touhou. And that's all he does now. And I see his art retweeted so many times and on the internet all over the place because people love his Touhou art. And I deserve all the credit for getting him into it.
God, his art's great, though.
It's so good. It's so good. Sometimes I forget that he ever drew SCP stuff.
Okay, this seems like a good time for the emails. So, actually, no, we do have another bit. So
There's no
not
bits.
Skipping over this bit.
I was very
because,
clearly informed there would be no bits.
Well,
in
I'm
my
not skipping over
contract,
this
it
bit.
says no bits.
I'm not skipping over this bit because Gooday sent me messages that if I read them out loud would give people details on how to free him from Allegata. I'm just doing this because I said no bits. So we're not doing Gooday's Allegata
You're gonna hear from
Adventure.
my
We're skipping
attorney.
that. And now we're going to do emails. This week we have a single email from Green Golem that is, if J Dune is so great, why isn't there a J Dune 2?
There is. What are you talking about? He's not out yet, but like I'm working on him right now. You'll see him soon.
Working hard in your lab.
Yes. Yeah.
This is a reveal about J Dune becoming a father.
Give or take about 9 months, you'll see J Dune.
Oh, God.
Hopefully. Fingers crossed.
And speaking of emails, it's probably because the
You should probably tell the listeners what the email is so they can send you some.
Yeah, well, I'm getting to that.
Okay.
But we had also been posting on the Twitter about that you could email us in, and then we get some emails. But because I don't know how to say this lightly without revealing a big trick we've been playing on all the listeners.
What trick? There's no tricks.
Yeah, no, there's no tricks. But you, Aiko, have not been posting stuff on the Twitter, so we've not been giving those reminders. So
Look,
I assume that's
I'm just
why.
interested in like perfecting my voice technique, as you can tell, with this new mic and this wonderful dulcet tones that I.
Yeah, she's just been so distracted by this new mic that there's been no post.
I really only am concerned with myself. We brought this up in the last podcast. Sociopath. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's agreed upon.
Also,
But
big
you can email
Evangelion
in.
fan. Got a lot of feedback about how much fun it was to admit that Aiko is a huge fan of Evangelion.
Really?
Such a fan.
More of that third
Not
person
interested.
talk, it's so strange.
Literally, Aiko, myself, not interested in any other animated products that involve robots. None of them. Just Evangelion.
Now, I am going to give the email this time so people can actually know how to email in.
Good idea.
A full word-for-word recreation of it is... a puny recreation is in the description, but it is Scip Squad, spelt SCIP, squadpod@gmail.com. And we also now have a Discord, which the link is also in the description, which is a collaboration with 3 other podcasts that you might never have heard of, and none of the hosts are on here,
Definitely
except
not.
for one that's Dune, for one of them.
I guessed it
one-
on one of the other podcasts.
You did.
One of the best episodes, clearly.
No, but it is what's the actual name of the server? It's just like the podcast hub.
No, it's SCP Oddcast, so SC Podcasts Hub.
And that is a podcast hub for the Skip Squad pod.
You're just talking over your guest.
Who cares about the guest? This is a guest time. He said it's time to talk. It's for SC Skip. It's for the Skip Squad podcast for Simply Creative People, Yurtcast, and Goodnight Rounder Pete.
Yep.
Which you can all find on that Discord.
Come join us and we'll
Come
insult
chat
you
us.
to your face digitally.
We do. Everyone gets a free welcome insult.
That's right.
And that's everything. So, as we say at the end of every episode, Dune, what do we say?
What do we say? I don't know. The Touhou project, right?
The Touhou Project Right is our finale. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Goodbye.
That was horrible. I didn't record any of it.